Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. Thanks for joining me in another episode of Keep It Real. So there's a symptom that I keep seeing over and over again when I take clinical histories on people, and so often amongst their list of symptoms is this condition, and it's happening so frequently. I thought I would address it a little bit on the show today. And it doesn't matter if it's men or women or young or old, all the way from 18 years old up to 75 years old. I'm just seeing it over and over and over again. And that symptom is anxiety. Anxiety keeps coming up over and over and over again. And it could range from being mild to a completely debilitating condition where it's hard for people to even leave the house. So most people fall somewhere in the gray category of just a very uncomfortable and kind of life-altering condition. And so I thought I'd address a few things today, maybe five, let's call it 5 strategies to help reduce anxiety. And the first one that we'll talk about is breathing. I see so many people when they're on their devices or just kind of in their daily lives, they're taking really shallow breaths. And you got to remember, your brain is only about 3% of your body weight, but it uses about 25% of your oxygen. So if you're just breathing very shallowly, the brain is just not getting the amount of oxygen that it really needs to function. And a lot of the symptoms associated with anxiety come from your brain just not really getting the nutrients that it needs to function properly. So there's lots of different strategies for breathing. One thing is just exercising. When you exercise and you get your heart rate up, your breath rate also gets up. So just that type of exercise, particularly like the high intensity interval type training where you do really short bursts of intense exercise, very short period of time, then you take a break and you do it again, and the whole exercise routine can just be a matter of minutes, but it's very oxygenating for the system. So that's one way. The other way is just by doing some breathing exercises. And there's a million different ways you can do breathing exercises. One basic one that I've given many times over the years is just the rule of 5. And what you do is you breathe in for 5 seconds, you hold it for 5 seconds, and you breathe out for 5 seconds. And you do that 5 times. So it's easy to remember. That's one. There's some much more nuanced ones. One that I'm playing around with right now is called the Wim Hof Breathing Method. And there's this guy, Wim Hof, that came up with this breathing technique, and it's pretty interesting. It involves something, it's a lot more intense than a meditative type breathing exercise. And what you do is you take 30 almost hyperventilating breaths, but it's not a short, shallow type breathing hyperventilation. It's deeper, more like that 30 times as opposed to very short breaths. And you do that 30 times and you hold your breath, and then you do that in a series of 3 or 4 times in a row. And it's pretty intense, and you get kind of some funny symptoms and feelings, but I've been doing it for a while, and it really is cool. It really helps to do several different things. But you can actually read more about this Wim Hof method, and it's a little bit more nuanced, and you probably want to learn a little bit more about it before you try it. But I first learned about it in a book written by an anthropologist and investigative journalist named Scott Carney, in a book called What Doesn't Kill Us. And it's all about his studying this Wim Hof technique, and he wrote a whole book about it. So if you want to learn more about it, it's pretty interesting. It's one that I've been playing around with lately. Another easy breathing exercise is you can just sit and relax in kind of a meditative position and just observe your breath going in and out. And what I think the breath work ultimately does is it helps to bring us back from the past, and it helps to bring us back from the future. And when your thoughts are in the past or in the future, the breath really goes shallow. And when you really sink yourself into the present moment, the breath is more natural and deeper. And so I think a lot of the positive benefits that we get from these kind of breathing exercises is just to help seat us really in the present moment. And so Oftentimes this type of living in the past or the future is just kind of anxiety provoking. So doing this breathing exercise or some breathing exercise can be really helpful in that regard. So that's number one, breathe. Number two is blue light. So, you know, for 99+% of human existence, we only had light when the sun was out. And of course, now in modern times, we could be in light 24/7. We can have light, we can be exposed to light all day long if we really wanted to. But there's some really negative consequences of having that much light exposure. And now with all the phones and devices and computers that we're exposed to, we're getting way too much of this type of light. During the day, the sun is a major emitter of blue light. And just to remind you, blue light is at the short wavelength of the light spectrum. So I remember the way we learned it in school for the light spectrum was Roy G. Biv, R-O-Y-G-B-I-V, and that's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And at the blue, indigo, violet end of the light spectrum, they're very short wavelengths, and that's quite stimulating for the brain, which is great during the day. But oftentimes people are looking at their devices and their computers and their phones at night, and that blue light, there's a lot of blue light that gets emitted from these type of devices, and that blue light keeps stimulating the brain and it could really interrupt sleep. So to help with decreasing anxiety, we really need good recovery and restorative sleep at night, and too many people are falling short of the amount of sleep that we really need, and then it affects the way they function the following day. And this can accumulate day after day after day of not getting good, deep, restorative sleep, and then it carries over to the next day, and anxiety is a really common symptom of this type of sleep deprivation. And one thing that you can do, just a really simple solution, is you want to shut off all blue light emitting devices, which is all your phones, devices, computers, 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, and then go to bed at a reasonable time. And that will help to reestablish your circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is this about 24-hour rhythm where the body and brain go through, where in the morning there's a higher amount of energy, the brain and the body gets more energized, and then as the day goes on, it slowly starts to go down, and then before you go to bed at night, that system is very low so that you can fall asleep and stay asleep pretty easily. And this is our circadian rhythm, and the next day it starts all over again. So we go through this kind of wave pattern of energy and stimulation, but we could really mess that up if we get exposed to too much blue light, particularly at night, when the brain and frankly our genetics are just not built for that amount of light at night. So that leads me into the third one, which is sleep. You gotta have good solid sleep in order for the brain and the hormones and the adrenal glands to all kind of regenerate and recover and repair. And if we're not getting good sleep at night, that is definitely going to lead to some symptoms of anxiety. So that's number three. Number four is we have to eat right. When we don't eat right, either skip meals for long periods of times, and then especially if we're eating junk food and we're skipping meals, the blood sugar just spikes and it totally plummets. And when the blood sugar plummets, in some people that stimulates an epinephrine response. And epinephrine, or the other name is adrenaline, adrenaline kicks in to try to boost our internal blood sugar, but unfortunately adrenaline or epinephrine is very stimulating, and so in some people it can cause anxiety, shakiness, irritability, even kind of a sweaty, just kind of really uncomfortable feeling, and those are all symptoms of anxiety. And it could just be coming from this biochemical process of not having, first of all, the right kinds of food in your diet, and then going for too long of periods of time without having enough food in the system, and that causes the blood sugar to drop and then this epinephrine reaction to increase, and that's very anxiety provoking. And the fifth one is get out in nature. when you get out in nature, there's so many studies on this where they would test people, they would test their cortisol. Cortisol is one of the stress or anxiety kind of hormones, and when they test them before and then they test them after spending some time, even a very short period of time, 20-30 minutes in nature, it shows that their stress hormones go down significantly. And this has been studied over and over again. So the evidence is very, very clear that spending time in nature is super good for the system, particularly at lowering these symptoms of anxiety. So once again, you want to breathe. And the other cool thing that breathing does is it helps to tone the vagus nerve, V-A-G-U-S. The vagus nerve helps to promote a parasympathetic part of our nervous system. The opposite of that is the sympathetic. The sympathetic is like our fight or flight. It makes us anxious. It makes us want to put us in a state where we feel like we're going to fight or flee, and that's a very anxiety kind of uncomfortable feeling. And we really only want to reserve that part of the nervous system for very specific situations. But things like deep breathing, this is probably one reason why people feel good after they go to church or temple, because when you sing, when you chant, when you do deep breaths, this is all very tonifying for the vagus nerve. When that vagus nerve goes up, increase in tone, that increases the parasympathetic nervous system, which is very relaxing, feel-good part of our nervous system. So we have breathing. We want to decrease the blue light. We want to help to improve our sleep. We want to make better food choices and go for shorter periods of time without food, and we want to spend time in nature. Do those 5 things consistently and your anxiety will definitely go down. So these are proven techniques that you can do, and they're just good lifestyle choices. So battle that anxiety, start to incorporate some of these things in your life, and enjoy life a little bit more. Until then, keep it real.